Dead Space 2 is one of my favorite games of all time, and with Halloween right around the corner, that's a lie, I decided to go back to this channel's roots since my first ever video was a Dead Space 2 video and attempt to beat Dead Space 2 on hardcore mode. Hardcore is basically survivalist in terms of enemy damage and health and that kind of stuff, and zealot in terms of ammo drops and scarcity. More importantly, in hardcore, there are no checkpoints and you only get 3 saves the entire game. Make it all the way to chapter 8 and die and haven't saved yet, you're going back to the start of the game. It's the most nerve-wracking thing I've ever attempted. But I'm a frog, and this is the story of how I put myself through Dead Space 2's hardcore mode. Let's hop in. Dead Space 2 begins with our protagonist, Isaac Clarke, happily answering a video call, which is the least relatable thing in the entire game. And this game actually changed Isaac from a silent protagonist in the original to a voice character, which I think works really well. It's revealed that this call is actually a recording from the past because now Isaac lives in a mental hospital on a space station and is haunted by hallucinations of his dead girlfriend Nicole until one day he's woken up out of the blue by the main character from a terrible Dead Space spinoff who you get to team up with throughout the course of this game. Alright, never mind. Australian Jenny tells you to run. There's scary monster men called Necromorphs everywhere, and after killing one of them with the door, the game begins. I ran into this guy from earlier who apparently went crazy and has a knife and he stabbed me, and that's the game. Roll credits. Just kidding. He cuts you out of the straitjacket and sends you on your merry way before committing Canadian healthcare. The Australian lady calls again, and because she's hot, Isaac decides to listen to her and follow her directions. This game literally has a button that shows you where to go. It's great. After scaring off a giant spider and falling through a ceiling, you get access to telekinesis, which is another one of the big changes from Dead Space 1. In that game, kinesis was pretty much just for puzzles or throwing explosive barrels. In this game, you can impale the Animorphs like this. These basic ones have spiky arms you can take off and also use for impales, which is a great way to save ammo. A bit further on, we run into a guy who chose to have surgery at the worst possible time, and the Necromorphs say hello to him in a fashion that'll give any kids watching this video nightmares. But more importantly, we get our first gun of the game, the plasma cutter. This is one of only 2 guns I use, and this one is always my primary. The strat here is pretty simple. Shoot off arm, use that arm to impale. And even if you aren't trying to do impales, you do the most damage by dismembering because the people who made this game are twisted. But like I said before, ammo scarcity is a very real thing on hardcore, so I wanted to conserve as much ammo as I could early on before the game gets hard. A bit further ahead, this crazy guy Strauss, who was a Necromorph survivor patient like Isaac, was yelling at me, but I was too busy looking for ammo to pay attention, and Isaac says he doesn't need Dingo, and she says fine, and then a few more of John Carpenter's The Thing show up, and he changes his mind again and calls her back. Here you unlock stasis, which slows enemies down for a time, and this is actually an insta-kill part. If this dude manages to hit you, it's just a one-shot kill. But thankfully, I didn't let that happen. It would have been funny, though. After that, the game acquaints you with these puker zombie guys who are pretty annoying because they don't have any limbs you can impale them with. If you're far enough away, they shoot a slime ball at you to throw back at them, but this first encounter is in a tight corridor, and I had to use ammo. Alright, so here's my Dead Space story. My dad bought me this game when I was like 12 or 13 because he heard it was really good. I played through until about this point and didn't touch it again for like another year because I was too scared to play it. That's my story. After getting a visit from my sleep paralysis demon, shooting the button to close a hull breach before getting sucked down, and taking out this prankster who was playing dead, I made it to the first store where I had a bunch of free weapons and suits that I guess I had because I was playing this through Xbox Game Pass. The weapons are whatever, but the suits are actually, in my opinion, a pretty big advantage, so I pretended none of them were there and bought the first basic suit and continued on my way. I can only imagine the comment section if I used one of those suits. I came into this big open room with ammo all over the place, which can only mean one thing.
Invasion.
No. It's time for our first boss fight. This fight is really simple. You just stasis him, then shoot his arms, and hit the stasis recharge station when you need it, but I messed up pretty bad and lost half my health. Thankfully, I didn't die, and after finishing him off and crawling through another vent, I made my way to Chapter 2. There's a bench here where you can upgrade weapons, your suit, and your stasis using power nodes. I upgraded my plasma cutter and my HP, which fully restored it for me. Power nodes can also be used to unlock certain rooms, like this one where you get a few items, the most important of which is the power node schematic to be able to buy power nodes from the store. Until the last few chapters, pretty much every credit I have is going into buying suits and power nodes because I wanted to get as many upgrades as possible, so no buying ammo or health for a while. I continued on and watched this lady get murked as well as this dude. This game is basically just a YouTube demonetization simulator, and Strauss calls you from across the way before the worst enemy in the entire game shows up. I don't know what they're called, but I hate them with a passion. Well, that's not good. This fight is scary because it's dark and the Necromorbiuses drop from the ceiling, sometimes right by you. I managed to make it through the fight, only getting hit once by one of the stupid idiot guys. Kangaroo Jack calls back, this lady's having a rough time. A guy jumps through a door, and I made my way to this part where a bunch of guys with explodey arms show up. They do massive damage, so if at any point in this game you manage to let one sneak up on you, you are probably dead and resetting. Isaac's dead girlfriend Nicole shows up at the train station, but I didn't really have time to talk because an infector guy spawns inside the train. He's supposed to infect check the corpse inside before the door opens, but one time I watched a speedrun of this game and learned you can just shoot him through the window. Once the train starts moving, I had an average New York City subway experience, which included this bit where you can save ammo by just not shooting. I ended up hanging from the crash car in a sequence that I'm really bad at. I don't know what order the enemies come in, I can't hit any shots, just bad all around. But I didn't get dead, and I shot the big hoss who shows up and the car fell down, and it's chapter 3. There's a lot of stuff laying around here for you to pick up, including a hidden power node, and I actually maxed out my inventory, which is the most annoying part of having the first basic suit. Speaking of annoying, the first main room of this chapter is a Minecraft YouTuber simulator where I had to fend off a horde of screaming children, but unlike Minecraft YouTubers, I didn't slide in their DMs after. They all have like 1 HP, so my strat for these fights when I only have the plasma cutter is to shoot one and throw literally every body part they have at the other ones to save ammo. After getting the second gun I'm gonna use, I can just start shooting them. While Crocodile Dundee was telling me about how Strauss is a psycho who murdered his own family, I grabbed a hidden semiconductor that I didn't even know existed until fairly recently, and then Isaac realizes that Dana is sending him through a unitology recruitment center. So basically the monster guys, Necromorphs, are created by these artifacts called markers, and the unitologists are people who see them as sacred and think everyone should be a necromorph because it's the final stage in human evolution or something. I don't know, it's basically just this game's version of Scientology. Sorry, Tom Cruise, if you're watching this. Anyway, a bunch more children spawn here, but instead of fighting them, you can just hop in a vent and skedaddle. Now, you may be wondering, Frog, to this point, you haven't shown us any deaths. Are you cutting them out? Also, I really like this video, and as a courtesy, I will now hit the thumbs up. No, to this point, I had no deaths. The first couple chapters aren't very hard, and I'm not going to spoil how many deaths I did have or if I even died at all. I did briefly consider running through the game again and dying a few extra times on purpose to add more drama, but decided that would be stupid and dumb. This right here is the first 0G section of the game. They made 0G in this game so much better than in Dead Space 1, and some of these parts later on get pretty scary. After dispatching this guy who tried to spook me, I unlocked my second power node room of the game and was rewarded by a whole lot of nothing. Time to go up. Where's the button? Oh, I'm dumb. After facing his two biggest fears, horses and women, Isaac continues on where I got this really sick impale against the wall until I got to the entrance of a unitology church. Earlier I referenced the puker guys having slime balls you could throw back at them, and here is now a demonstration. Very fun. Danish has us run inside the church, and thus begins chapter 4. We're here because she's at the top of the church with an escape shuttle, but considering this game has 15 chapters, you can probably guess it doesn't quite work out. At the church's gift shop, I got to sell some stuff, buy some power nodes, and upgrade my health, which I maybe should have done sooner because upgrading health is a pretty good safeguard against randomly getting killed. I picked up some ammo by a few Kool-Aid drinkers before getting to my first combat at the church, this room with a few infector guys. The Necromorphs here look really cool. They're supposed to be like unitologist priests or something like that. After placing a button, blowing a couple Necromorphs out of an airlock, stasising through a broken door, and listening to Isaac's dead girlfriend complain about being cold, I found the schematic for my next suit, the security suit. Unfortunately, at this point, Isaac has gone full-blown schizo, hallucinating that Nicole is trying to stab him in the eye with a needle, which can absolutely kill you if you don't mash the A button fast enough, before it's revealed it's just him. I went back to the store now to buy my new suit, only to find I needed 20,000 credits and was nowhere close. I was able to upgrade my plasma cutter some more at least. Let's go ahead and run through this door. Alright, okay then, never mind. This fight is against Necromorphs that are basically just velociraptors. Like literally, the velociraptors in Jurassic Park are what they were based on. I think I heard that in a YouTube video many years ago, so I'm just gonna repeat it and hope that it's true without fact checking. Remember that suit I got earlier? Time to go to the store to buy it. I still don't have enough credits after all that, you've gotta be kidding. So funny thing about this room, there's a couple Necros and these annoying guys on the floor. Whatever, I cleared it and got in the elevator. I made it all the way up to the next floor, but for whatever reason, I thought there was a semiconductor in the last room that I missed, so I took the elevator back down. Only to discover that no, I didn't miss anything and I just wasted a minute for no reason. Such is the way of life. When I made it back up, I was at the start of chapter 5, which is a spot that a lot of people on Reddit recommend for your first save. I'm not a Redditor though, so I continued on. The first couple freezer rooms just have boxes to smash and you can run freely through them before the third room where a puker guy shows up. Then in the fourth room, there's a bunch of spawns. I got startled by one of them that I wasn't ready for, but thankfully I turned around in time. So the next room has a puzzle and 0G bit that you can absolutely die to. First by the fan that you fly through, and then by this trapdoor thing that opens and closes. I've never been killed by either, but still on hardcore, this is honestly the kind of stuff that's more worrying than just regular combat. Random things you usually don't have to think about that have the potential to insta-kill you. While the trustworthy Australian lady, who definitely won't betray me, was talking, I found a store, sold a couple things, and finally had enough credits saved for the security suit. One thing I haven't really shown yet either is that on hardcore, I just hoard medkits. So at this point, my safe looked like this. After collecting a spare 10,000 credits, some ammo, pausing the game to put away my laundry, story, and dealing with another new enemy type, I made it to this big part of the church where I was jumped by Cannibal Corpse album artwork that very nearly killed me because of my inability to land a shot. The reason you would save at the start of chapter 5 is because of this fight. After getting away, you're rushed by more children, then regular Necromorphs start spawning, and I'm not sure if these spawns are infinite or not, so I just pushed my way through rather than trying to kill everything. Nicole hops on for a second to say what sounds like 2000s emo lyrics, and then we're on an elevator to the top of the church. Okay, we found Dana, and that's the game. Alright, no big challenge at all. That was pretty short. Just kidding, and a huge twist that surprised everyone. She turns out to be a bad guy unitologist, which means so far the two biggest antagonists in this game have both been women. What did Visceral Games mean by this? So Dana reveals that the marker on the station was actually built by Isaac, as well as the other patients like Strauss, in a government project, and now the unitologists want him so they can build markers all over the place. In other words, she's crazy and you don't really care when a government shuttle shows up and blows her away. This is another scary section where you have to mash A and fall below before getting greeted by something called the Tormentor. He tosses you around and you have to shoot him in his yellow spots, and if you take too long, you die. After running and getting sucked outside and shooting explosive barrels, Isaac gets launched through a window back inside, and it's time for chapter 6.
Look, it's over. All my plans just blew out the window.
So Strauss says that the marker is in the government sector and that since him and Isaac helped build it, they can tear it down. Chapter 6 is, in my opinion, where this game's difficulty starts to turn up a bit. I don't think the first 5 chapters are hard at all, but from this point on is when the game gets pretty challenging. Like this room with the first combat of the chapter, a couple big boys show up, you take them out, no big deal, then the worst enemies in the game start showing up in pairs of 2. I don't know if they spawn infinitely, but I do know that every time I've used the store in the back after thinking it's safe, more show up and hit me. So even if it technically isn't infinite, there's definitely trickery happening. With that in mind, I went through the door to the next section as soon as it unlocked, although they did keep holding the door open. But eventually I got it to shut and was safe. But I now had other problems, namely these cis guys that are on the floor and the wall and the ceiling that if you walk close enough to, blow you up. They don't insta-kill you if you have full health, but they do pretty major damage, and if you aren't paying attention and run into one, you're gonna have a bad time. Across the way was a node room that ended up being worth opening, and a bench where I upgraded my stasis for only the second time. And yeah, there's not much to talk about for a bit. There's another room similar to the earlier one, except you have to put out a fire by cutting off the oxygen. A puker guy hides in an elevator, there are some more velociraptors, and then you come across Ellie, who's mowing down Necromorphs on her own. Despite just getting backstabbed by someone else, Isaac immediately tries to team up with her, but she's not interested and carries on. I bought a few power nodes, took care of some more Necros and Cis, and made my way into a school. This is particularly scary to me because I have nightmares about once a month where I'm still in school and haven't done any of my assignments. Oh wow, look at this wholesome scene of a mother reuniting with her baby, so touching. Oh, they spilled raspberry jam all over the window. Okay, listen, this is not at all what it looks like. This is a wholesome family game. Oh god, look at that cute face, adorable son of a bitch. While in the gymnasium / cafeteria, the first enhanced necromorph of the game shows up. They have more health and do more damage than their non-enhanced counterparts. When you get into late game, pretty much every necromorph is enhanced, but for now they'll still be pretty rare. After hitting a panel in the gym, a big holdout fight starts. I remember this part destroying me my first playthrough, but here it was no biggie. I got another hello from Nicole, looked at the terrible art on the wall, and lost all sympathy for the infected children, and Ellie called because she found Strauss, who said he knew Isaac. So we met up at the transport hub where the big bad government guy, Tideman, shut off the power and life support, and the first brute of the game shows up. Brutes are a mini-boss, but they're super easy. You just stasis them and shoot their shoulders. Given that Tideman is now trying to kill her too, Ellie decides to team up with Isaac and Strauss. And with that, I came across this guy on the wall who seemed to be having a rough day, and I took an elevator to chapter 7. I knew that at this point, if I were to die and had to restart the entire game this far in, I wouldn't have wanted to keep playing, and it would have ruined my enjoyment making this video. So I decided to make my first save here at the start of chapter 7. After fully upgrading my plasma cutter and putting the rest of my nodes into stasis, I continued on flying around in space, fixing an elevator, and then getting on said elevator. Part of why I wanted to go ahead and save in chapter 7 was because of this fight. It's not super hard, but it can get dicey as the tripods keep showing up at random windows and can overwhelm you. I don't really have a strategy, I just run around like a chicken with its head cut off. I did get hit once and had yellow health, but all good, I made it through. At the top of the elevator, I finally found the schematic for the only other gun I use, the force gun. Now you may be wondering, out of all the guns in this game, why is the force gun the only other one I use? Because when I was like 14, I watched Michael from Achievement Hunters play through this game and he used it. That's literally the only thought I've ever put into my loadout. So for most of the chapter, you're dealing with an AI that's trying to kill you and she'll throw up insta-kill barriers like this. I didn't walk into any, but in this room, like an idiot, I tried to kinesis something to me and set one off, which would have killed me if I was closer to it, and I also could have been sucked out the window if I didn't react fast enough. It also meant that there were now necromorphs all around me that I had to deal with. Bad all around, but at least I didn't die. But yeah, this is what I mean. Starting in chapter 6, some of these fights do start to trip me up some rather than me just blowing through everything. But the old reliable dismember impale still works like a charm, for now. Hey there, buddy. How's it hanging? Discount Cortana cuts off life support, some more Velociraptors show up, and we get to the mainframe. This is mainly about placing some buttons in certain spots, and I did the right side, then moved to the left where two things of note happened. One of these two things is that the first enhanced slasher of the game shows up, and second is that if you place all the things so they turn purple, you unlock a secret tunnel that takes you to Peng. Peng is an Easter egg trophy, and there's an achievement and stuff for finding it, but more importantly, the Peng trophy itself is worth 10,000 credits, and there's like 40 grand of stuff in that room altogether, so I definitely wanted to grab it. Keep disabling the security. Oh my god, he's trying to get me through the glass. Get cornered and take damage because I suck. Destroy some things, kill some more guys, knock Cortana dies, and off we go. This room has Sis, which I did remember and was focused on, but what I completely forgot about were these other dudes that I don't even know what to jokingly refer to as. I'm just glad they weren't able to kill me. This room sucks. There's a bunch of lurkers, leapers, and an enhanced slasher. And after an outer space section where you take out this dude to throw stuff at you and realign solar panels, I was falling through space in a section where any minor mistake means you are donezo. Thankfully, there's a store after because I had a ton of stuff to sell. And for the first time in the game, I did buy ammo because I was low and knew there was a big fight coming up. Back in the transport hub, Ellie and Strauss accidentally woke up an entire army of Necromorphs, Scooby and Shaggy style. I've never actually watched Scooby-Doo, but based on what I know of their characters, that sounds like something they would do. But yeah, there's this holdout fight that isn't too bad as long as you keep your back to the door you need to run through when unlocked and don't run out of ammo. And it's a good thing that I decided to buy ammo because I ended up using every single round I bought prior to the fight. But nonetheless, we're on to Chapter 8. In the first node room, there's a schematic for the vintage suit, which looks kind of like an old deep sea diver suit, and besides the obvious of it improving my armor and inventory slots, it also gives a 10% discount on all store purchases, which is very useful. I kind of met up with Strauss and Ellie, except they were locked behind glass, so I pushed forward, killing Necromorphs, taking names even though they didn't have any. This is Paul. Upgrading my health, kinesis damage, and force gun, and getting to yet another part that's really only scary and hardcore. You have to get through these spinning things, and if you even touch them while they're going, you're dead. I couldn't remember how exactly you're supposed to get through, and after thinking I was stuck, I panicked a bit and just tried to fly to a safe spot. After regaining my composure, I found the way through. Some lurkers show up, and I don't mean the Discord kind. There's a couple more insta-kill things of that variety, but they're much easier, and I made my way back to Strauss and Ellie and Chapter 9. At this point, Strauss is completely losing it, but I don't really have time to deal with that because there are inhuman monsters trying to kill us running around that absolutely wrecked me to start this chapter off. I didn't die, but as you can see, I didn't do particularly well against them and took a lot of hits. I'm like 90% sure this guy is supposed to drop a semiconductor, but he didn't, and the cope I'm going with is that he didn't and went out of the map. Here, if I let this guy blow up, I would probably be dead because there was not a lot of space between me and the window. Speaking of guys blowing up, this has gotta be my most intelligent moment throughout this playthrough. I mean, I did take out the guy I was trying to, I guess. My force gun at this point wasn't really upgraded, but I had a ton of ammo and wanted to use it to save some for the plasma cutter. That decision nearly cost me everything. Look at my health after that hit. Look at it. Now on a tram with Strauss and Ellie, we learn that the Ishimura, the ship from the first game, is here, and Ellie tells us that the official story is that there was a terrorist attack. Something Bush did 9/11. But before we can think too much about it, the tram gets stuck, and I have to unstuck it by fighting through more birds, another guy having a case of the Mondays, and blowing up giant fuel things while tripods try to kill me. Getting back on the tram, Tideman takes out part of the track, which means I now have to go inside the Ishimura in what is definitely the best chapter in the game, but also the spookiest and toughest so far. So Chapter 10 takes us through some of the same environments as Dead Space 1, and Nicole torments Isaac throughout, and this is where I decided to make my second save of the game because I thought there was a decent chance of dying at some point. Whether or not I was right remains to be seen. There are no enemies on the Ishimura for quite a bit until all heck breaks loose and a brute shows up. No big deal, take him out, whatever. Then a second brute shows up. After taking him out, a lot more Necromorphs follow. Like I said, this chapter's another jump up in terms of difficulty. A bit further on, you go through a decontamination chamber that would be a great spot for an ambush, but no one shows up, meaning it's definitely safe. This room does have a power node to the left, but this is another point where I think enemy spawns are infinite or at least pseudo-infinite, so I just powered through everything and sprinted to where you have to get to. After another zero-G puzzle, I had to go back through there and deal with the enemies I had skipped before going through another decontamination cycle, except this time Necromorphs decided to jump in too. Meanwhile on the comms, Strauss is coming at Ellie with a screwdriver, which is less than ideal, but I'm probably just now halfway through the super long chapter, so Ellie will have to deal with him herself.
They're swarming into a hole in the medical deck. At least you won't have to go through there.
Unexpected obstruction ahead. Welcome to the medical deck.
So the medical deck is where Nicole deleted her Minecraft account in the first game, which means this is a really bad spot for Isaac, along with there being goo all over the wall that smells slightly bleachy, and the Nicole hallucinations make sure to remind Isaac throughout. At this point in the game, even though I had just made a save this chapter, I was actually really nervous. Because of the increase in difficulty and me being less familiar with these chapters, this is all actually really nerve-wracking. Especially this room, because you get the only thing worse than the leaper guys. Enhanced leaper guys. I could not land a limb shot on the last leaper, and I ran myself completely out of plasma cutter ammo. So I got really lucky that I wasn't punished. That's the end of the medical deck, so I 0G'd my way to the bridge where more mayhem happened, but unfortunately I wasn't protected by Allstate. So I knew that velociraptors show up here, but I wasn't sure where exactly, and I was completely caught off guard by yet another enhanced leaper who took me down to red health before I managed to kill him. Thankfully, I was keeping a few health packs on me at all times at this point. I took care of the velociraptors and a couple spitters, got down to the main part of the bridge, and took a life pod, and so long, Ishimura. Unfortunately, that's not a goodbye to Nicole, who after the escape pod crashes, gives Isaac a pretty bad dream before he wakes up to the sight of Strauss shoving a screwdriver in Ellie's eye. But hey, we're on to chapter 11. This game is almost over. I just have to not screw up terribly. So chapter 11 starts with more velociraptors and a couple babies, some sys navigation, before getting to this big room, which is kind of like the main hub for the whole chapter. You go back and forth through here a couple times. But this room is really perilous. You're supposed to turn on power, but it's another instance where I'm not exactly sure if the spawns are literally infinite, but they certainly feel like it. And we're to the point in this game where just about every slasher that spawns is enhanced. So this chapter, although it may not be very long, is still a really tough one. In this section, by pure chance, I happened to just turn around at the right time. I found a diamond semiconductor that I never knew was there. Diamond semiconductors, if you don't know, sell for 25,000 credits. And right after that, I ran into Strauss, who had something rather interesting with them, but Ellie, as it turns out, is still alive at least. After that, you get launched into space and have to deal with another thrower guy, move some lasers around, detonate some sys, come back in, have a tough fight in this room. But after making it through, I was able to access probably the most important power node room in the game because of the schematic located inside. After giving Strauss a lobotomy, I ran back to the store and can now buy the advanced suit, the best suit in the game, at least on a first playthrough. And it also looks way cooler than the vintage suit. The chapter ends with an elevator fight that isn't too bad. There are a couple enhanced slashers that show up towards the end, but for the most part, you just kill pairs of regular old Necromorphs, which at this point in the game pose basically zero threat. Following the elevator, Nicole follows the path of every toxic relationship by giving Isaac an ultimatum where he tells the hallucination that he loves her and doesn't want to let her go, and she suddenly turns normal and nice again, and they all live happily forever after. At this point, I could pretty much finish off the last of my upgrades, and it's chapter 12 time. I've mentioned the game's difficulty turning up, but this is actually one of the easiest chapters in the entire game. Most of it's just spent gathering parts to repair this giant drill. You fight a couple Necromorphs doing this, but for the most part, there's no resistance. Then after getting everything, you ride the drill in a fight that I also read a lot of people like saving in advance of, which I honestly don't get at all. You don't fight any enhanced Necromorphs, and there's health packs all over the place. It's one of the easiest holdouts in the entire game. Chapter 12 only took me about 11 minutes real time when I was recording, so just like that, I was already on chapter 13. As easy as chapter 12 was, chapter 13, 14, and 15 are the three hardest chapters in the game. So after sending Ellie off in a shuttle to save her, I made my third and final save. To this point, I still hadn't died. I had a chance to do this entire game deathless, and I was determined to make that happen. I fought off the Necromorphs coming through the tunnel before the entrance to the government sector. I avoided the army guys trying to kill me and then unleashed the Necro horde on them. Hey, explodey guy, don't mind if I just explode you. This room sucks, but I fought my way through it. There's another velociraptor fight. I dodged laser beams and worked my way through this room, and okay, this part the enemy spawned pseudo-infinitely, so I wanted to just run through them. Unfortunately, I ended up in a bad spot. There's an explodey bag here and a baby about to detonate here. What do you think happens? Is it A, I survive, B, I blow up, or C, my health goes down really low and another guy finishes me off? Got your answer locked in? Here you go. I wasn't even taken to red health. I have no idea how I survived that. I'm cracked. The bottom floor of this room has an enhanced brute fight. It's way easier than it probably should be. You literally just stasis him with the barrel, then run around him and shoot a shoulder blade. That's it. It takes like 10 seconds. Afterwards, I made it to a store. I no longer needed power nodes, so I loaded up on two things: plasma cutter ammo and health packs. I left the store with 213 plasma energy, by far the most I've had at any point in the game. So we come across this giant marker that Isaac helped build, and Tideman calls and is not happy, and a convergence starts happening, which leads us to the eye poke machine. This is yet another thing that can insta-kill you if you mess it up, and it's very nerve-wracking, but thankfully I didn't and I got through it. And we're on to chapter 14. Now, the funny thing about chapter 14 is that the entire chapter, this dude called the Ubermorph chases you. He can't die. You can dismember him to slow him down, but he grows his limbs back like a lizard and starts chasing you again. This dude also delayed me beating this game for a while because I just absolutely hate the feeling of one guy chasing you that you can't escape. So going as fast as I could, I ran through the hallway hallways in this room, which can take a while if you don't already know you have to throw this guy's corpse in front of the door. This hallway's stupid, this room is also stupid, and I was outside in another 0G section. I'm like 90% sure he can't follow you out here, so for now I was safe. So like the earlier 0G sections, you can get crushed by machinery and die, but this stuff is really easy to avoid. There's a thrower guy at the end of the tunnel who I needed to take out. And I don't understand what's hitting me. What killed me? I'm rewinding it. I've watched this so many times. I don't understand how I died. Especially because look, I had almost full health and something that I didn't even see just insta-killed me. I legitimately have no idea what happened. So much for Deathless. Back to chapter 13, Sludge. So I'm not gonna show all of that again. I did basically the same stuff except I was a lot cleaner. I didn't have any close calls or anything. The one thing I did do majorly different was when I got to the last door of chapter 13, I bought even more ammo. This time having 328. Okay, so I poke machines, slow down this guy, run through the hallways. Okay, back to the 0G. As you can probably imagine, this time I just unloaded on that dude. I did not care about ammo conservation or anything. There's one more room where Nicole says hi again, then one last store and bench, the last in the game. My loadout for the ending was 11 medium med kits and 287 plasma energy. I needed to make that last for the entirety of chapter 15. As soon as I walked outside, I got ambushed by enhanced sleepers and took a few hits, and I had to use a couple med kits. So I ran back inside and grabbed a couple more from my vault. Okay, now time for the last chapter. The Ubermorph shows up again and chases you this time until the final boss fight. So kind of like the 0G section, I had more than enough ammo for this chapter, so I just unloaded everything I had at anything that moved. I was not messing around. One thing I do differently than some of the other people I've seen is at these inside sections, instead of running before the Ubermorph catches up, I stop and let him enter so that I can dismember and stasis him again and kind of know where he is, because the outdoor fights are really tough and the last thing I want is to have no idea that he's right behind me. Through this, I used almost 100 rounds of plasma energy, but I still had almost 200 remaining. Getting to the marker, Tideman is waiting and looks like Two-Face, and there are some more quick time events that I succeeded at. Take this, Tideman. I missed. The evil Nicole hallucination turns out to be bad, who could have seen it coming, and Isaac enters a battle with the marker inside his own mind. This is the last fight. Quick side note, I love the delivery of this line.
Yours is the last body we need to be reborn. The makers must be absorbed.
It sounds awesome. So the way this works is Nicole comes after you, and if she gets too close, you're insta-killed. You have to shoot her a few times, and then you can shoot this big gold heart. From the second cycle on, there are also children after you that you have to deal with while also avoiding Nicole. It's really hard, and had I not hoarded medkits, I probably would have been boned because I had to use a few. But I made it, and the credits started rolling. But it's a fake out, and the game isn't over quite yet. Ellie shows back up in the ship wanting to rescue you, and there's one last flying section that you can 100% die on. I've called a few things nerve-wracking. This is by far the most nerve-wracking part in the entire game. If you hit anything, you are dead and you are going back to your last save. But thank God I didn't hit any debris and I managed to mash A fast enough to grab Ellie's hand. And that, my friends, is Dead Space 2's hardcore mode. If you like this video, then click the video on screen to see another great video from me. Thanks to my patrons as always. I'll catch you next time.